God of all,
the God of all.
It's a cool tune, huh?
Yeah.
May the Lord bless and keep you. May His grace and His face shine upon you. May the Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. And give you peace.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ye'eh panav elecha v'yichunecha, V'yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom, v'yasem lecha shalom. This is the way you shall be blessed from day to day. He'll be your rest. May the Lord bless and keep you. May His grace and His face shine upon you. May the Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. And give you peace. May the Lord bless and keep you. May His grace and His face shine upon you. May the Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. And give you peace. Give you peace. Give you peace. As the day is getting late, don't be silent, don't be still, oh God. And the darkness overtakes as your enemies growl. Let the children of God come sing it out. Shine your light, we will shine your light. Illuminate the nations, all creation awaits. We will shine your light. We can hear the voice of earth as it's crying out to be reborn. And we finally find the hope that we've been looking for. That the children of God come sing it out. Shine your light, we will shine your light. Illuminate the nations, all creation sustain. Your name's the only one we praise. And your name's the only one we praise. Yeshua, our God, you rule and reign. We sing hallelujah, where you dwell, oh God. We will remain singing hallelujah, sing hallelujah. Your holy place I will not leave. Your power moves me to rise. Hearts are burning in your flame. A love that cannot be contained. Yeshua, our God, you rule and reign. And we sing hallelujah, where you dwell, oh God. We will remain singing hallelujah, sing hallelujah. Yeshua, our God, you rule and reign. And we sing hallelujah, sing hallelujah. You dwell, oh God. We will remain singing hallelujah, sing Yeshua, our God, you rule and reign, and we sing hallelujah, hallelujah, where you dwell, oh God. We will remain singing hallelujah, sing hallelujah. What sort of darkness is this? We're finding ourselves an impossible feat. And still the spotlight is shining straight through my heart and revealing its peace. And I've lost my way, or so it seems, to fade away. But still you see me time playing hard to find my life. And it's finally getting old to find you're still by my side, with your light will find in my soul. Flying blind in the night, over an ocean with no wind, searching for the light to lead me home again. And I've lost my way, so it seems, as I fade away. Still you see me time playing hard to find my life, and it's finally getting old to find.
She left, and we're going to pray for her to return safely and bring that little sunshine back here. Safe travels for the Taylors as they're off celebrating Raiden's 18th birthday. And I said a very happy birthday to you, Raiden, but you missed it because somebody didn't turn the switch on. Sorry, not my fault. But anyway, happy birthday. And then we said Alan turned 17 today. And we said Jordan's turning 17 Saturday.
By the way, Pearl's turning 18 on Sunday.
And Pearl's turning 18 Sunday. You were going to leave that out. See? So, and then, and anybody else that had a birthday, happy birthday to you too. Anywhere, all of you. Okay, so, and out there. We don't want to leave anybody out. So, Telma Shaw, we were just praying for her. Now, see, Telma, I was just in the process of saying that you were having allergies like Bill did when we first moved here, and that's when they told me that we were not live. Now, if you tell me again we're not live, I'm just going to put the microphone down and walk away.
You're live.
Okay. I can't see out there. God, don't pull a trick on me. I'm trusting you. Anyway, Telma's not here. She wanted to be, she and Mike, but the allergy thing. So I was just giving you some advice that you didn't hear. But it was raw honey and bee pollen and whatever other natural thing anybody can tell you that works. So Bill had to do that too. Let's pray for Roy Breeden in North Carolina. As they are continuing to add the meeting room to their house, he's the one that said that they were just praying for their father's direction. And through something that we mentioned online, a prayer request or something that he had sent in, he knew he had the Father's answer, that they were to stay right there and to add a room onto their house to host streamers to come and have services together in their area. So they're going to do the same thing we're doing here. They'll just oneg there, obviously. So, and then we have a lot of people who are being affected in their jobs very seriously. Now, thankfully, some people are getting paid when they're being told don't come to work, but that's not the case for everybody. So some of our young people back here are already affected. They've been told, sorry, we can't use you, or you get to work 1 day a week or whatever. Some of them are just totally out of jobs with no pay. And that's not just our young people. This is sweeping through our whole congregation and the nation. So let's definitely pray for those people. If there's something you can do, sometimes it's just something as small as, if you can only do a $20 grocery gift card if you know somebody is out of work and it's going to be a while. Whatever we can do, let's help each other. Like I said in the newsletter, we're blessed. Let's bless each other. Let's do what we can to help each other. The parents that are home with their kids that may be out of school, it's going to affect their jobs too because somebody's got to stay home. A lot of the daycares are shut down. So let's do what we can to help each other. And before I finish, Allison, can you come up here? I need your sweatshirt for just a minute. Come on, hurry. Yes. I don't need you to take it off. I know you got a shirt under that. Okay, turn around. Let's see the back of this. All right, Brandon and Melody and Alan and Allison went to a Mandisa, the hair. Went to a Mandisa concert, and she gave Melody and Allison this sweatshirt. So I don't know that the camera can zoom in, but I just want to remind everybody, this is who we serve. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who we serve, okay? So you remember, she's wearing it around. Let's take that attitude everywhere we go. Let's be the light and show people that, yes, we're going to be wise. We're going to be prudent. We are going to do everything we can not to participate in this virus in any way other than to bring healing. So just wanted to bring that up here and just point that out.
Let's pray. Remember to pray for Margie.
Okay, he said for me to pray. So if you guys will just...
Let's all pray together. Let's not just...
Yeah, let's pray together.
Everybody out there join us in prayer.
Yes, all of you. Father, we just thank you for the privilege to gather, that we have not been mandated to disassemble. We thank you that we can be here and that we all understand each other's situation, that we have a lot of our retired people who are choosing not to be here because of health issues and uncertainties there. And we certainly respect that. We love them, Father, and pray that you would be with them and not just keep them safe from what's going around now, but improve their health overall, Father. And don't let fear be powerful in their lives. just discernment and wisdom. And we do appreciate their wisdom and what they bring to those of us who have not gotten to where they are yet. We can definitely glean from that. So, Father, we need them in our lives. And I just pray that you would protect them and keep them safe. Father, I pray that you would touch Nayla's sister and her grandson or daughter and anyone else in the family who's needing the healing. I pray for Miss Jean that you would keep her safe, and the Taylors as they come home, that you would just help Telma adjust to living in Tennessee now with the allergies, that her body would calm down and she would know what to do in a health respect to help her body acclimate. Father, I pray for Roy and his family as they build this room, that it would just be a blessing, that you would give them favor with everyone who comes to work on this place, and that they would just feel your presence there and be changed just because they got to come there and work on this room, and that the blessings would just flow for this family and everyone who comes there to be part of what's going on that you are doing. Father, I pray for the people in our congregation and our families and throughout our country who are not just affected by being out of work because of this virus, but those who have lost loved ones. It may seem like in some places the numbers are not very big, but if it were in my household, it would be a huge number, and it would be all that mattered at the moment. So I just pray, Father, for those families who have been touched by this in the worst way, that you would be with them, that you would comfort them, and if they know you, draw them closer than ever before and be their comfort and their strength. And if they don't know you, Father, that this would be the opportunity to not let the loved one's life be in vain, but that it would serve to bring them to you, closer to you, and to know you. Father, I just pray for all of us that we would all stay well, that we would have your strength, your discernment, your wisdom as we navigate these uncertain days ahead, that you would show us ways that we can help each other, that you would show us ways to bring the light to others and to be that light in what feels like a dark time right now, but that we would not lend to the darkness or let it seep into us, Father, but that the light would be so bright that everywhere we go, that the darkness would be dispelled and your light would shine. Father, we thank you for all of this and so much more. Everything that we can't remember, you already know, and you already have the answers to. And so, Father, if there are any other needs in this building tonight, and families that are represented here, for the online families and their families, that you already know the needs, that you can minister to them according to your will and your purpose, and we ask that you do that, Father. And we thank you for the safety, for the security, for the assurance that we know we have in you. In Yeshua's precious name, amen.
Okay, we'll go ahead and dismiss Miss Nayla and the young people. Give them a moment so you don't knock them down when y'all dismiss, okay? Yes?
I was going to tell people online, some of them aren't getting the information about what we're doing right now. They need to sign up, either email me or go online. I don't care which way.
All right. As the quiver is being dismissed, remember what y'all told me, okay? All right, y'all have a good evening. All right, we'll see y'all in a little bit. Beth was just reminding me to remind everybody out there in the live stream, if you're not getting the emails that Beth sends out each week, make certain that you are on the email list. And you can go to the Jacob's Tent website at jacobstent.org, and you can join the email list there. So she was saying that I need to kind of tell everybody what we're doing for the next couple of weeks. We sent out an email very early. Well, we finished it very early this morning, and it went out later this morning. Yes, after much deliberation and prayer and back and forth. And we just feel that we don't want to give in to fear, but at the same time, we don't want to be cavalier. So for the next 2 weeks, or to the end of the month, we're not having any community meals here. That's for Wednesday night and for Shabbat. And I'm saying that because I'm assuming that there are many of you who are local that you join us, and just to make sure that you got that information. So, and some of you that are out of town, we're not going to be doing community meals until the end of the month, and at the end of the month, we'll see where everything's at with all of this, and then we'll proceed from there. But we just felt like that if there was going to be an opportunity in our situation for somebody to have a bug and pass it along, that would probably be the best candidate for something like that to happen. So we're going to suspend that for the next couple of weeks. And we'll be meeting here on Wednesday nights at 7. And for those who want to be here, we certainly welcome you to be here. We'll be live streaming just as always. On Shabbat, we're going to meet at our regular time, and we will live stream that as well. But because we're not doing the oneg, we're not going to remain for the midrash, because everybody's going to be hungry, wanting to get home to get something to eat. So at that point, it just really doesn't serve a purpose to come back, because the Losies, for instance, would have to drive 45, 50 minutes to get home. We're going to have to drive 45, 50 minutes to get home, and others are in similar situations. So for the next couple of weeks, that'll be our procedure. And we're just going to believe that this, the intensity of the crisis as it is right now is going to subside, hopefully, very soon. We are not living in fear, but we're just going to see what it is that the Father wants to do in our lives through all of this. So that's a synopsis. We posted that on our Facebook page. I think we posted it on our web page. At least we were going to try to do that. But anyway, if you have any questions, you can send us an email at info@jacobstent.org. All right. So with that, I want to get into the scripture here and get into what we're going to talk about. Oh, I do want to say this. Had a conversation with Brad Scott the other night. And Brad is doing much better. He had I'm assuming it's all right for me to share this. I'm going to do it anyway. He had, an MRI just recently. And the bottom line is that the tumor is not really doing anything. It seems to be stationary. And the word that he used the other night was things had kind of stabilized. So he hasn't had any seizures since the end of January. He's still on medications, and he's still having a few little things with that as far as how it affects him. But all of that is to say, Brad is itching to get back to doing what he does, and that is to be teaching. And so guess what? It would seem that the first place that he's going to be to teach is going to be right here at Jacob's Tent for Shavuot. So anyway, so everybody who's local, you might want to make sure if you want to, if you want to get a seat for that, you might want to go ahead and be thinking about that. And so with Brad coming, I know that Brad sits in a lot of times on our live streams on Shabbat, and he interacts a little bit, and we're honored, to have such a friend as Brad. But anyway, he just told Beth and I the other night that he's anxious to be here with us. And so if everything remains the same and there's no hiccups and this whole virus thing, kind of levels out, then the plan is for Brad to be here at Jacob's Tent for Shavuot. And what we're going to do, since he's going to be here, we're going to expand it. We'll do a Friday evening, we'll do all day Shabbat, and we'll do Sunday. So we'll have a good time. So I thought that was great. So put that on your calendar. That's May 28th. Wait a minute. I don't have my phone in front of me. It would be the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the end of May, whatever that last weekend is. I think it ends like on the 30th or the 31st or something like that. 29th, 30th, and 31st of May. Very good. So anyway, kind of mark that on your calendar. All right, so let's get into the scripture. I want to go to Genesis chapter 10 and read about the nations, the development of the nations leading up to the foundation of Babylon. And so we're going to call this the rise of Babylon and the call of Abraham. Now, there is a tradition, and I want to underscore that word again, tradition, that like Hananiah, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Similarly to what happened to them when Nebuchadnezzar threw them into a fiery furnace, Nimrod supposedly did the same thing to Abraham, and with the same outcome. He was spared through all of that. But it is a legend, but my point is, it's always struck me as kind of interesting that Abraham, his call to come out of the Kasdim, or come out of Babylon, was about the same time that Nimrod was in the earth. And so you had the rise of this prototype of the Antichrist, frankly. You had the rise of this guy who's this mighty hunter before the Lord, and at the same time you got the call of Abraham, almost coinciding with one another. So, as I like to always remind everyone, when we read specifically in the book of Genesis, we're not just reading a history lesson. We're not just reading a record of what happened in the past. We're also looking at patterns for things that will happen, and I believe in our day. So, Genesis chapter 10, verse 1. Now, this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And sons were born to them after the flood. And so it goes into the sons of Japheth. He talks about Gomer and Magog, and where have you heard that name before? And Meshach and Tubal and all these different names. I'm going to skip over those, frankly, and I'm going to get on down to verse 6. And it says, the sons of Ham, or Ham, if you prefer, but better, Ham. The sons of Ham were Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, Sabtecha, and the sons of Rama were Sheba and Dedan, or Dedan. Cush begot Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter. And the beginning of his kingdom was Bavel, Erech, Achad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. And from that land he went to Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Ir, Calah, and Resen between Nineveh and Calah. That is the principal city. And then it goes on from there to talk about some other descendants. So again, what we're going to get into here is the rise of Nimrod and how Abraham was called out of this. So let's backtrack just a little bit. After Noah and his 3 sons depart from the ark, from these 3 sons are going to come all the inhabitants of the earth. Rabbinically, it's understood that there were 70 nations. Again, tradition is that when the Creator spoke in an audible voice from Mount Sinai, that his voice actually divided into 70 tongues of fire, or as it were, 70 cloven tongues of fire, which is going to be something that's replayed in some ways in Acts chapter 2. But anyway, he spoke in every language under the heavens is the tradition, and the tradition was that we're 70. Well, all of these 70 nations come from the 3 sons of Noah. And so when we get down to the sons of Ham in verse 6, and let's backtrack on another vein just very quickly. What did Ham do not long after they exited the ark? His father Noah grew a vineyard, had some wine, had a little bit too much wine, and what did Ham do? He uncovered his father's nakedness, and as a result, Canaan had been cursed. Ham means hot. It's something that is hot-tempered would be the kind of idea, with the thought here. Hot-tempered, something that is bubbling up. It's boiling, and eventually it's going to kind of boil over. That's the idea behind this word Ham. And so from that we get the word Hamas. And Hamas is the Hebrew word for violence. It's also in Arabic represents an Islamic military organization. The word Canaan comes from a root word that means to be made low, which is kind of interesting to me. Now, geographically, Canaan is the low country, so to speak. But in that he was cursed, he is brought low because he's going to be made servants to all of his other kin. And if you look in the genealogy here, let's see, let me find it real quick. In verse 6, the sons of Ham were Cush, Mitzrayim. Who's Mitzrayim? Egypt. Put, which most people think is Libya, and Canaan. And so the inhabitants of Canaan, or the people who took their name from Canaan, have this connection to the people who are in Egypt. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Basically, they're brothers. And then it goes on and talks about how Cush begat Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. Now, the fact that it says he was a mighty one doesn't mean he was the first one, because there were other mighty men. There were those mighty men of renown in Genesis chapter 6. It's just that he is someone who, as far as I can tell anyway, he's going to be the first king. He's going to be the first one to establish a kingdom. Before that, people were ruled by judges and rulers and, the leaders of clans and tribes and things like that. But apparently, Nimrod is unique in that he is going to be the first one to establish a kingdom. So if you're going to establish a kingdom and you're the king, your kingdom needs something else. What do they need? Subjects. And why do they call them subjects? Because they have subjected their will to the will of the ruler, the will of the king. So I'm going to get you to consider this. Nimrod is someone who rises to power. He coerces or convinces, whatever the word is, people to subject their will to his will. And not too long after, the earth has seen an incredibly cataclysmic event. That the whole world that once was is no more. Everything is changed. Everything's different now. And so in that scenario, here comes this guy by the name of Nimrod, who is going to establish a kingdom. He's going to be a mighty one in the earth, and he's going to convince people that they need to subject their will to his. And so in saying that, I want to choose our words carefully here. I think it's fair to say that right now, even though what's true may be minuscule compared to how it's being portrayed to us, I think it's fair to say that the world is in chaos right now because they really don't know what to do. I mean, we're responding to it, and depending on what nation you live in, it can be pretty severe response. But my point is this has kind of taken the world by surprise, or it seems to have taken the world by surprise. And most of the nations have been caught flat-footed, and it's exposing weaknesses. So I'm not comparing that to the flood by any stretch, but I'm just saying that. Well, let's see. It was a Democratic politician who a few years ago made this statement: never let a crisis go to waste. So it seems to me that from the beginning of time, there have been people who have used a crisis, something that is chaotic, something that is unpopular, what have you. They have used that situation to exploit it, to tell people what they want to hear, give people what they want. Why? In exchange for something. Loyalty, and even being subject to them. And so this is the kind of guy that I see Nimrod to be. Like I said, before he came on the scene, we don't have any record of any king or kingdoms. All we have is people who were probably ruled by judges and other types of leaders. So with Nimrod, in his rise to power, that changed. And so he, either through conquest or coercion, maybe terror, I don't know, he attained dominion over these people. And it says that the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. That's in Genesis 10, verse 10. Of course, later on, that is going to be expanded by the man named Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar is the first king to come to Jerusalem, to destroy Jerusalem, to raise the temple, to carry temple treasures off into Babylon, to put them in the house of his God, to take the men of Judah and take them into captivity. He was a Babylonian. He was the first Gentile king to do that to Jerusalem. And so there are patterns that are established in the very beginning. Let me go off script for just a moment. Growing up, I always heard that in the end of days, that whoever this Antichrist, Anti-Messiah was, most likely he was going to rise out of Europe, probably out of the common market. Is anybody old enough to remember this? Okay, besides me. And that he would be a Jew from the tribe of Dan. Anybody ever hear that? Okay. He would be a Jew from the tribe of Dan. Now, there are some problems with that. Number one, you can't be a Jew and be from the tribe of Dan. If you are a Jew, you are from the tribe of Judah, right? If you're from the tribe of Dan, you are a Danite. All right, that's the way that works. All right, but more to the point, this Jew from the tribe of Dan was going to rise up. Everybody was going to love him. He's going to be a man of peace. He and his cohort, the false prophet, were going to start this one world religion. Everybody's going to love them. Everything's going to be great. And then, of course, in the middle of that, he gets shot in the head and he comes back to life and all these things. Everybody focused on Rome. Everybody focused on a revived Roman Empire. All right, there is a very important principle that we see in Scripture, and that is if you want to understand what happens in the end, you have to go back to the beginning. And in the beginning, show me Rome. Where is it? It's not there. It's not mentioned anyway, right? Okay? I'm not saying there wasn't a place, I'm not saying there wasn't a peninsula that eventually became Italy, and eventually there was a town or a city called Rome. But my point is, you go back into the Scripture, who do you see rising up in the very beginning in defiance of the Almighty? Babylon. It's Babylon from the beginning. It's Babylon that comes against Jerusalem and destroys it, and destroys the temple and carries the people of Judah into captivity. And so from the very beginning, this kingdom that was established, Bavel, remember, it means confusion. And the idea behind Bavel and confusion, it's not just that God came down and confused their languages. Actually, the implication is there's confusion by the fact that they are wanting to mingle together. That's really what is behind the word Bavel. So that's very important, I believe, to see in the very beginning. It's also important to see this, that because Nimrod was the son of Cush, who was the son of Ham, that this was not a Semitic line that started this. In other words, it can't be a Jew from the tribe of Dan. It was from Ham. It was from his lineage, the one who uncovered his father's nakedness. That's his lineage is the one that established Babylon. And everything about Babylon is defiance toward the Almighty. And so it says that he began to be a mighty one. So we've heard this a few times. That word began. Guess what it is? I'm going to go to the tablet, Bran. Okay. Here is the word that is translated began. Halal. And what does that mean? To defile, to profane, to corrupt. So embedded in that verse that he began to be a mighty one is this, at the very least, a hint that he is someone who is profane. He is someone who's corrupt. He's someone who defiles. And so we could say that Nimrod began to be mighty in defiling or profaning the authority of the Creator. Being mighty, he begins to coerce people into rebellion, into idolatry. In fact, that's what the name Nimrod is said to mean, rebellion or rebel. In fact, in my notes here, in Genesis chapter 14, verse 1, we have this king by the name of Amraphel. And Amraphel, according to Brown Drivers Briggs, which is a lexicon, has Amraphel meaning the sayer of darkness. Someone who has dark sayings, someone who is, it almost sounds like he's, what's the word I'm trying to find here? He says things that are mystic and cryptic and have dark overtones, which implies what? He knows how to use words on people. He knows how to use words on people. Well, anyway, the rabbinical commentary says that Amraphel, this king of Shinar that is mentioned in Genesis chapter 14, verse 1, is Nimrod. So then, if he's called Amraphel, why is he now called Nimrod in Genesis 10? All right, I'm at the tablet, Brandon. This is the word or a word in Hebrew for to rebel. And so if I add the nun to those three letters, it becomes Nimrod. It's almost as if Amraphel was his name, it's almost as if Nimrod is a title or a label. And what is that label? Rebel. He is a rebel from the beginning. And if he is someone who is a sayer of darkness, if he's someone who maybe is really good with words, what is he probably going to do? He's going to coerce, he's going to manipulate, he's going to convince others to join him in that rebellion. Verse 9 says that he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. I'm going to go here now. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. And what I've written here is the term lifnei. Of course, this is Yud He Vav He. Lifnei means, or is translated as before. Before Yud He Vav He. It literally means in the face. So if, gentlemen, if another guy gets in your face, what does that mean? To put it in Southern terms, we're going to throw down, right? It's on, right? All right, well, guess what? In Hebrew, it can have that same connotation in certain contexts. So he is a mighty hunter, lifnei Yud He Vav He, in the face of the Creator. This is the same terminology that is used in Numbers chapter 16 when Korah and Dathan and Aviram and 250 notable men, it said that they were in the face of Moses. They were opposing Moses and Aaron. What were they doing when they were opposing Moses and Aaron? They were rebelling. They were rebelling, according to Moses, not against me, he says, not against Aaron. You're rebelling against God. That's the problem. Well, that's what Nimrod is. He is a mighty hunter before the Lord. He is opposing the Almighty. He's challenging his authority. In fact, the word in Hebrew for hunter, if you hope you got that, I'm going to write another Hebrew word up here. Zayid. Zayid is translated hunter. In a lot of Jewish commentary, it's rendered as a trapper. Someone who ensnares, someone who knows how to build a trap and then ensnare someone. That kind of hunting. Exactly, Esau. That's what it's supposed to bring to mind, because that's exactly what Esau was. He was a skillful hunter. Literally in Hebrew, it says that Esau knew how to trap. Right? So the idea behind hunting is, and I know that we've got some hunters here. I'm not going to call any names over here, but no. But, and I'm not a good hunter. I'm not, okay? But those who are good at hunting, I think they would have to agree with this to some extent, that hunting is, it includes or encompasses the skill to know what your game likes, where your game's going to be, where they like to travel, and all those kinds of things, and what might even lure them into that certain place, and you're there waiting. Because you've done all of the preliminaries to scout out the territory, to see signs that they've been there. You might even, like I said, you might even leave things there that would kind of lure them into that spot, and then you get out there, and if you go deer hunting, my understanding is those deer hunters that go in the morning, they get out there in the woods while it's still dark, before the deer get up. And when they're walking out in the woods, they're not talking like this, but they're talking real soft. Right? Am I right so far? And they might even wear something like John's wearing over here to kind of blend in with the environment, because they don't want to alert the prey that they are being stalked. So that's the idea behind hunting, biblically speaking, to set a trap, to set a snare. Esau is probably the best example of it, but he's not the first. Nimrod is one of the first. Cain might have been the first, but Nimrod is the one who uses this skill to coerce people into joining him in his rebellion. So in other words, Nimrod's not a mighty hunter of game necessarily. He's a hunter of people. He's looking for the people who are vulnerable, who can be manipulated, coerced, and convinced to join with him in rebellion. So I can't help but think of some of the things that are going on right now. There are a lot of people who are scared to death right now, scared of their own shadow, scared they're going to run out of toilet paper.
Wear hazmat suits at the grocery store.
Yes, Beth saw in the grocery store today, was it in Cleveland or Athens? It was in Athens. Yep. My daughter-in-law and Beth saw a person shopping in Ingles grocery store in a full and complete hazmat suit.
Gloves, shoes, everything.
The whole thing. Okay. I want to think that had to be a joke. All right, but there are people who are scared to death. Here was my point. If somebody were to come along and say, I'm going to give you this, and I'm going to make sure you never have to worry about that, and I'm going to take care of you, and I'm going to give you what you want. In that kind of state, some of these people who are so afraid, do you think it's stretching to think that those people would do whatever you want me to do? Just protect me, watch over me, give me what I need. I don't think it's a stretch at all. I think the stage is set for that right now. And so the Nimrods of the world are the ones who are really clever, really crafty. They know how to kind of set a snare, perhaps even exploit a situation to their advantage, to get people to join with them in what would ultimately be rebellion. I don't know that Nimrod said, hey, I'm a rebel against God and I want you to join me. Let's all rebel against God. I don't think that's the way it worked. I think it was, he told them what they wanted to hear. He told them what they wanted to hear. They bought into it. They gave their loyalty and their allegiance to this person, and then they followed him into that rebellion. And remember, he is a sayer of darkness, according to this one commentary. In other words, he can say things that are intended to manipulate, to coerce, to deceive, and that's why he's a hunter. By the way, that's exactly what Adolf Hitler did. As far as we know, Adolf Hitler didn't kill one Jew personally, and yet he's responsible for the deaths of millions and millions of people. And how did he accomplish that? Why is he labeled as the one who's responsible for that? Words. He was really good with words. He did that, by the way, exploiting the chaos that Germany and other European nations found themselves in after World War I. And in Germany, the currency, before Hitler came to power, the currency, a wheelbarrow load of currency, was more valuable as firewood or fuel for your fire versus having purchasing power. That's how devastated Germany was in those days. And so people are in this chaotic situation. They're looking to blame someone. I mean, again, I'm going to use our current situation. I do not think that Donald Trump is responsible for the collapse of the stock market any more than I think he's responsible for the climb of the stock market. I don't think he may, he and his administration or any other administration may establish policies that release, the people to do what they want to do and engage in commerce and all those things. But ultimately, if the economy is robust and strong, it's because the people are engaging in commerce and they're doing, they're putting their talents and gifts out there to be used, and it's found value in the eyes of this person over here, and they buy into the business. It's the people doing these things. So it's not one person's fault if it collapses, if it's not one person's glory if it rises. It just doesn't work that way. However, that's the way people look at it when things aren't going the way they want them to go. So into that kind of a situation comes an Adolf Hitler, and he says, if you get behind me, if you join with me, I'll make sure this never happens again. So keep your eyes and ears peeled over the next few weeks and listen. Observe what's going on as this crisis unfolds, as this chaos continues. I hope not very long, but keep your eyes and ears open at some of the things that are coming out of people's mouths. It'll be very interesting to see, because that's the way it's always worked in times past. These people will come along and they will appeal to men's desires, they'll appeal to their hopes while concealing their true motive. These hunters tend to be intellectual. They have great oratory usually, and they instill a false confidence in people, and then that's when the people fall into their snare. So this is how Babylon was built. This was the beginning of his kingdom. It was the foundation of his kingdom. And if Babylon is the antithesis of everything the Creator is for, then really the foundation of his kingdom was rebellion. Let me find my note here. Okay, it says that the word beginning, as that was the beginning of his kingdom, is the word Reshit. Where did I put my pen? No, Bill, you did it wrong. All right, this is the word Reshit. Now, if I put a bet in front of it, it would be Bereshit, or in the beginning. But Reshit, it means the beginning, it's the first of something, or the primary. And the root word is this one here, Resh Aleph Shin. And the root word is Rosh, or head. And so what it's saying is Bavel, which means confusion by mingling. That is the head of his kingdom. It's the basis of his kingdom. Here's something else that's kind of interesting to me, and I'm skipping all over the place, I realize. But if Bavel is the beginning of his kingdom, or the Rosh, the head of his kingdom, it's interesting that many years later, in Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar, who's the king that comes along and destroys Jerusalem and carries Judah into captivity, destroys the temple, carries temple treasures into Babylon. In Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and in that dream he sees the image of this man. And it has a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, 2 iron legs, 2 feet with 10 toes, iron, merav, or mingled with clay. And when Daniel goes and appeals to heaven, goes and has a night vision, and he sees the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had and also gets the interpretation. He goes back to Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 2 and tells him, here's what you saw. He describes it for him with the head, the Rosh of gold, and said, you, Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon, you are the head. Now here's why I find that interesting. Looking at another body, the body of Messiah. Who's the head? Messiah is the head. Yeshua is the head. And so everything that pertains to that body, that affects that body, is going to emanate from where? From the head. So would it not be the same for this other body? Because what does that image in Daniel 2 represent? It's all these kingdoms that would come along and that would oppress or heavily influence Israel in some way. The chest and arms of silver was the Medes and Persians. We just had Purim. During that time was when we have the story of Esther. And then after the Medes and the Persians came the Greeks, the belly and thighs of brass. And after the Greeks, under Alexander, when he dies, it divides into 4 kingdoms. And after the Greeks subside, here come the Romans. And they're allegedly the 2 iron legs. Because one thing about the Roman Empire is all of the things that all these other empires had, the Romans took it everywhere. That's what the legs do. They carried it everywhere. They would go into a region, conquer it, and whatever gods they served, they said, okay, yeah, that's cool. we'll bring all those gods into our pantheon and we'll carry those beliefs over into this other region of the world. So that's what Rome did. They were powerful, but they were expansive, and they carried all these philosophies and beliefs into other parts of the known world. By the way, even over into the West, where you and I are right now. There's this heavy Roman influence in our culture as well. But anyway, here come the Romans, and then of course there's this last kingdom, the one that comes at the end of days. It's 2 feet, 10 toes, iron mingled with clay, and that's the one that is existent when the stone cut from the mountain without hands comes and crushes all the kingdoms. But my point is this: if that image describes another body, the one that opposes the body of Messiah, where does it get its influence, its orders, its directions from? From the head. And who is the head? Babylon. And Babylon was established on what? Rebellion, defiance, in the face of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, as it were. And his kingdom began to spread throughout the land of Shinar, which eventually will become synonymous with Babylon. That is the land of Shinar. In fact, let me give you another example here of that use. Let's go to Zechariah. I don't have time to do this tonight, but just to kind of establish some context for what we're about to share. If you look at Zechariah chapter 4, you see the vision of Zechariah the prophet is one where he sees this 7-branch lampstand, a menorah, and it's flanked on either side by 2 olive branches. In fact, this is where Israel gets its emblem, the menorah flanked on either side by the 2 olive branches. I believe one's natural and one's grafted. But the point is, he sees this vision, and I believe that this is a vision to describe what God's people are to be in the earth, how the Messiah is really at the center of all that, and yet Israel coming to fruition, the restoration, and all these things that we've heard about. This is what Zechariah sees. All right, so if you get that in your mind, then it's important as we move to the end of chapter 4, in verse 14, so he says, of these 2 olive branches, these are the 2 anointed ones who stand beside the Lord of the whole earth. And then verse 1 of chapter 5 says this: then I turned and raised my eyes. All right, let me pause here. Let's just pretend that big number 5 there doesn't exist. In other words, there's no chapter break. And let's read this as Zechariah wrote it. After seeing the vision of the menorah flanked on either side by the 2 olive branches, then what does he see? I turned, I raised my eyes, and saw a flying scroll. And he said to me, what do you see? So I answered, I see a flying scroll. Its length is 20 cubits and its width 10 cubits. And then he said to me, this is the curse that goes out over the face of the whole earth. By the way, that word curse is ha'Allah. Allah. This is the Allah that goes out over all of the earth. Kind of interesting. Then he says, every thief shall be expelled according to this side of the scroll, and every perjurer shall be expelled according to that side of it, and I will send out ha'Allah, says the Lord of hosts, and it shall enter the house of the thief, and the house of the one who swears falsely by my name. It shall remain in the midst of his house and consume it with its timber and stones. Then the angel who talked with me came out and said to me, lift your eyes now and see what this is that goes forth. And so I asked, what is it? And he said, it is a basket or an ephah that is going forth. And he also said, this is their resemblance throughout the earth. Here is a lead disc lifted up, and this is a woman sitting inside the basket. All right, so there's a woman inside the basket. And then he said, this, referring to the woman, is wickedness. And he thrust her down into the basket, threw the lead cover over its mouth. Then I raised my eyes and looked, there were 2 women coming with the wind in their wings. So they had wings like the wings of a stork. And they lifted up the basket between earth and heaven. So let's just focus on the basket and what's in it. What's it called? I just told you. Wickedness. So what's in the basket? Wickedness. And so I said to the angel who talked with me, where are they carrying the basket? And if they're carrying the basket, they're carrying wickedness. Where are they carrying it? And he said to me, to build a house for it in the land of Shinar. And when it is ready, it will be set there on its base. I read all of that to tell you this. When it says that it is set there on its base, that word means foundation or origin. So wickedness in the earth, it didn't begin with Nimrod, but Nimrod kind of codified it. He brought it all together into a kingdom that was founded upon defiance and rebellion toward the Almighty. And this isn't really my topic tonight, but it's on my mind, so I'm going to go over here anyway. Are y'all still with me? Yes. Go to Revelation chapter 17. So while you're turning there, again, I'm just mentioning what we just spoke of in Zechariah. In Zechariah, he sees a vision, and in the vision, he sees this menorah, and it's burning, and on the side of it, on each side of it, are these two olive branches, and what's on those olive branches? Olives. And why is that important as it relates to the menorah? Because those olives are going to be pressed, and the oil is going to become the fuel for that light, right? Again, this is the emblem for Israel. And Israel is not just a natural branch. Israel has a branch that's been grafted into that cultivated tree. And so this is a picture of Israel in the restoration. As these things are beginning to happen, at the same time, he looks and he sees all this other stuff going on, and he sees this woman who is to epitomize wickedness placed in a basket that's lifted and carried to its origin. And where was it? The land of Shinar. All right, so now I'm going to suggest to you that what Zechariah is seeing is a vision of the last days. What's going on in the last days? Even as God is restoring his people, what is it in the midst of? This wickedness that's beginning to abound. Now, when they took the basket, the lead disc was over it. The woman was in the basket. They set it up on its base, which was in the land of Shinar. But what is the implication? She's going to get out. She's going to be let out. All right? Are you with me? Revelation 17. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and talked with me, saying to me, come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. And so he carried me away into the Italian peninsula, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which, no. He carried me away into what? Or desert. I recommend to you that Rome is not in the desert. Rome is not in the desert. Rome is in the Italian peninsula. And what does John see in the wilderness? He sees a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And it goes on to describe the woman. And then on her forehead in verse 5, a name was written. What does it say? Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. And it goes on from there. And my point is not to get into Revelation too heavily tonight, but just to suggest that what we're seeing in Revelation 17 is a continuation of what happened in Zechariah 5. The woman, the wickedness that was in the basket, is now let out. And she is working in cooperation with the beast. And what is the beast all about? It is full of names of blasphemy. It is the antithesis of the kingdom of heaven. It is rebellious toward God's purposes. And it's going to go through the earth and try to trample down God's people. Allah. So now let me continue on. So what I put here in my notes is that wickedness returns to rest where it began, and that is in the land of Shinar. And from there we read in verse 11 about how he went from the land of Shinar, he went into Assyria, he built Nineveh, of course, another very prominent city. In verse 14, you see a connection between Egypt and the Philistines and all the different nations as they're being formed in the very beginning of days. But I really wanted to focus on tonight that this is the scenario that Nimrod rises in. And so as he's talking about Nimrod and how his kingdom starts in Babylon, and then it goes on down to verse 21. Let's read that. In verse 21, and the children were also born to Shem. Now remember, what we were reading about was the children of Ham. We skipped Japhet, and we went to Ham, or Ham. And from Ham came Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan, and of course, Nimrod. But now in verse 21, the children were also born to Shem, the father of all the children of Ever, the brother of Japhet the elder. The sons of Shem were Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, Aram. The sons of Aram were Uz, where Job lived, Hul, Geter, and Mush. Arphaxad begot Salah, and Salah begot Eber. And to Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided. And it goes on from there. All right, so my point here was this. Just like when Nimrod's come into power, you've got this other force in the world that's also coming together. Babylon is founded upon rebellion. Babylon is founded upon defiance. But at the same time, you've got a developing story in the line of Shem, specifically through the line of Eber, because eventually that's going to take us to a man by the name of Avram, who is later going to become Avraham. And so let's look at this name Eber real quick. I'm on the slate, Brad, if you can pull that up, please. This is how you spell the name Eber, or Eber, in your Bible. E-B-E-R. Ayin, Bet, or Vet, Resh. I guess I probably should help you out and put the Nikud down there. I'm sorry. Eber. Not ever. Eber. Or Eber. Now, why is that interesting to us? Because if I put the Yud there, and I change the Nikud just a little bit, it becomes that word. Ivri. And what is Ivri? Hebrew. And so Hebrew is the name, I guess you could say, or the root word that is, in this particular case, a name, the name Eber. It's also hinting at that out of this line of people is going to come a nation that is not going to be founded on rebellion, but it's going to be founded on what? Submission to the true king, the one and only king. His kingdom is also being established in the earth, even as Babylon is establishing its kingdom. And so you've got these two kingdoms that are being formed simultaneously, as it were. And I understand that the Father's kingdom has no beginning, has no end, but his kingdom in the earth, he is forming it, even as the adversary is trying to, through Nimrod and others, is trying to form his kingdom. That's usually the way it's working. And this is all happening right after a very cataclysmic event, a lot of chaos, a lot of probably a lot of fear about what could happen. If he did that once before, he could do that again. I'm sure that Nimrod would not have hesitated to play into people's fears about what might happen, and particularly if people were moving away from the Creator. In fact, let me go ahead and get started just a little bit in Genesis chapter 11. verse 1, it says, "Now the whole earth had one language and one speech." If I could summarize that, what it's saying is they all spoke the same language and they were all on the same page. It's not necessarily saying the very same thing. On one hand, they speak the same language, but it's also suggesting they had the same mindset. They all thought the same. "And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east." I'm going back to the slate, Brad. Mekadem. Now, I wanted to write that and kind of emphasize that because there are some translations that do not render it that they were traveling from the east. Some render it they were traveling toward the east, which I argue is incorrect. Because this letter right here, the mem, is usually used as a prefix of or from. And so they were traveling from Kedem, which is a word for east. So here's the point. If they were traveling from the east, which direction were they moving in? They were headed west. All right. This is, well, let me show it to you this way. All right, I showed you this word. The name Ever, but the root is avar, and that means to what? To cross over. And from avar we get Ivri, which is Hebrew. So a Hebrew is one who crosses over. When Avram came from the land of the Kasdim and he crossed the Jordan and he came into the land of Canaan, they called him Avram ha-Ivri, Abram the Hebrew. He was the one who crossed over from that side of the river to this side of the river. Okay? But also we could say that is, because everything natural teaches us things spiritual, he's crossed over from a place that is founded upon what? Because where did he come from? Ur of the Kasdim. He came from ancient Babylonia. And so he came out of a place that's founded upon what? Rebellion. And rebellion is going to lead to what? Death. So he has passed over from death unto life. He's going to go to a place that I'm going to show you. There I'm going to make you a great nation, etc. So Hebrew, and this is kind of a sidebar, but Hebrew is not an ethnic term. Now, we've made it into an ethnic term. But originally, it was not an ethnic term. It was a descriptive term of someone whose actions determine this is who they are. They have done something, not how they were born, not whose bloodline they were descended from, but things they had done. In this case, he crossed over from Babylon to this side of the river, from death to life. So if it's not an ethnic term originally, I'm going to argue that it's still not an ethnic term, should not be used that way primarily. So if you and I have passed over or crossed over from death unto life, we're Hebrew. And I think that's one of the reasons that Paul says that if you're in Messiah, you are the seed of Abraham and heirs according to the promise, because you have crossed over. You've left death and came into life. So Ivri comes out of this term that is avar. Okay? But now, let's see, how do I want to do this? Let's do it this way. What does that one say? Arav. And what does arav mean? To mix or to mingle. What do you notice about those two words? The three letters that comprise the two words are the same. It's just they're arranged a little differently. One is avad, to cross over. That means from death to life. The other is arav. You're going to mix things together, and when you mix things that weren't supposed to be mixed together, what do you end up with? Death. So one's life, one is death. And just the novice looking at these characters on this slate, they might think at a glance, they're the same thing. Kind of like trying to detect the wheat from the tare when they're just young and starting to break through the earth. If you don't know the difference, you might confuse the two. All right? So anyway, from the word arav, we get this word. Me arav. Now that is a word that is used in Daniel 2 4 times to describe that last kingdom. It is a mixed or mingled kingdom. But Me'arav is also the word for west. So where do you and I live in terms of east or west? We live in the west. So we are away from Jerusalem. We're away from where he sets his name. We are away from where the king is going to rule and reign from. The Torah shall go forth from Zion and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, and it'll spread out over the earth. But you and I are west of that. We're separated from that, geographically speaking. So Me'arav, west, to move toward the west, thematically is to move away from the Creator, to move away from the origin, to move away from where everything began, which is why we have to do what? Teshuva. We have to return. We come and let us return into the Lord. He is broken, but he will heal us. He is stricken, but he will bind us up. We have to return to him. So all of that is to say this, and just a kind of a footnote. I'm going to add the yud onto it. And the so-called Western Wall is Kotel Ma'aravi. It's the Western, Ma'aravi. So just to kind of underscore, Me'arav means west, and it's derived from the term that means to mix and to mingle. If you are looking for the setting of the sun, when light is mingling with darkness and day and night, which direction will you look? West. When things are beginning to mix and to mingle with one another, you look toward the west. So again, thematically, the west is associated with moving away from the Creator. So all of that is to say, in Genesis chapter 11, they were of one language, one speech, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, they were headed toward the west. And so philosophically, where were they headed? Away from the Creator, away from the origin of things, away from truth. And they found a plain in the land of Shinar. Shinar means to be shaken out. And I think I shared this with you once before. The idea or the legend behind Shinar is that as the flood waters receded and were abated, that a lot of those dead carcasses and all that death and gore and corruption began to settle in the place that became known as the land of Shinar. That's where God shook all that out. That's a legend. Take it for what it's worth. But it's kind of interesting to me because that's where Babylon started. And so Babylon, which is rebellion, was literally founded upon corruption and death. And they said to one another, come and let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, come and let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. So as far as reading, I'm going to stop there tonight, but let me talk about a couple of things real quick, and then we'll just open it up for some comments or questions. So they're of one mind, they're of one speech, they're headed toward the west, they're philosophically headed away from the Creator. And then they said, come and let us make bricks. And this is where something that Brad shared many years ago, and I heard him, and I when he did, I just wanted to slap him because I thought it was so profound. It's like, why didn't I think of that, But he distinguished, and this became very real for me. He distinguished the difference in what God does where Jerusalem is concerned. It's a city made of stone. God is the one who creates or forms stone. But man can't do what God does. To simulate it, what does he do? He takes clay and straw and water, and he mingles it together, and he puts it in a mold that he has formed with his own hands. And when he puts that mixture in the form and it dries, the first brick looks like the second brick, looks like the 10th brick, looks like the 1,000th brick. It's all conformed to the image that man has created. Whereas stones are unique. Some are large, some are small, some are jagged, some are smooth, some are prettier than others, but he takes those stones and he fits them together. You and I are regarded as living stones being built up into a spiritual house that he is going to inhabit. All right, so that's what Jerusalem is representative of. Babylon is made of brick, those things that men do to mix and to mingle. And what was their objective? Let's build a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves. The word name, we've had this probably 100 times by now. Shem. But what does it really mean? What's the etymology of this word? Authority or reputation. So let's put it to you this way. When Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth got off the ark, and they built an altar, and they sacrificed, and it became a sweet aroma in the nostrils of the Almighty, he told them to do some things. He said, be fruitful, and what? Multiply. And implied in that word multiply is what? Spread out. What is Nimrod and the founders of Babylon wanting to do? Come together. Let's come together and be one. Let's defy what the Creator said. We don't want to spread out. We want to come together. This is where globalism, seems to me, is first introduced into the world. And they want to come together and make a name for ourselves. And if Shem is authority or reputation, what are they saying? We will establish our own authority. But if you're going to establish your own authority, it has to be in defiance of his authority. And who's behind this? Nimrod. And what does Nimrod mean? Rebel. So if you put that together, then it seems that Nimrod comes and he says, look, we need to all come together. We need to all work together. We're in this together. And we need to build something that's going to last, and it's not going to fall, and no flood of waters or anything that's unleashed against us is going to be able to take us down. If we all come together, we can do this thing, and we're going to make it. And we're going to build something in our image. We're going to establish our authority and our reputation in this, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the earth. And that, to me, is the telltale comment. That's what their objective is in defiance to the Creator. All right, so I said I would kind of come to a close with that statement, but we didn't get to it in the reading tonight, but it is interesting to me that when mankind sets out to do those things, the Creator even acknowledges that they'll do whatever they've imagined to do, which is scary. But sometimes when men have imagined to do things, the Creator's not quite ready for that to happen. You know what he does? He lets something happen that creates a lot of confusion in the world. So anyway, we'll pause there. Anybody had anything they want to add to this or share? You just got that? Well, if we have any questions online, somebody let me know. I'm going to take just a few minutes. I was looking for that other microphone. Oh, Brandon's already got it up here. Beth, you want to take this? Or Robert, that's fine.
You alluded to, well, you said the Jew from the tribe of Dan, which that can't happen. But what you didn't go into is where the anti-Semitic, where does the Semitic come from?
Shem. Yeah.
I mean, it was obvious to me, but I don't know if everybody else caught that.
All right, so what he's pointing out is, what's going on here? Well, it froze up. the word Shem, that's one of the sons of Noah. And from Shem, we get this line that we're talking about, Eber, that's eventually through the line of Eber, we're going to have this man by the name of Avram or Abraham. So from the name Shem, what? Use my finger? Oh, my battery died on the pen. Oh, okay. Thank you, sir. All right. Well, I shouldn't have erased that, should I? All right, but anyway, from the name Shem, we get this word. So you hear that a lot. Somebody's anti-Semitic. What does that mean? They're anti those people who descended from Shem, is the idea. But, putting a finer point on it, usually when people use the term anti-Semitic, what they're referring to, they're anti-Israel is what it really boils down to. But anyway, he's just saying the word Semitic comes from the name Shem. Why is it sh here and s there? Transliteration. Just as it's kind of been, diluted through the years. But that's where the name, or that's where the word comes from. Anyway, anyone have anything else they want to add or share or ask? Beth, are you seeing anything online?
I'm not seeing questions yet.
Well, let's go home. Anybody? Okay, Warren, over here.
So I've seen a lot of, like Michael Rood's teachings and things on Revelation.
Who? No, I'm just playing. Just kidding. Just kidding.
So obviously, a lot of the things in Zechariah that he's talking about where the woman in the basket, right? The Ish and the
Right.
Aish, the fire,
Yep.
and the things of, when you really go through the understanding of, what he would be seeing in that time frame of trying to describe certain things, right? And then like how Michael describes it, and you really kind of see how it's more so now. You can see the stork with the two fires being a plane and carrying, the destruction or the things that, would make sense that it would be a fire in the basket with the dimensions and everything that it talks about being, like a Scud missile, or like I said, Michael goes into a lot of the detail. Just didn't know, kind of what you had thought. I mean, because, when you talk about the revelation, and it really does reference the woman, right?
Yeah.
But then you kind of see maybe the duality of the...
Well, you hit on that word there, okay? See, I'm one of those people that believe a prophecy can be fulfilled, and then it can be fulfilled, and then it can be fulfilled. It's like Hosea chapter 11, I've called my son out of Egypt. And he's referring back, of course, to when Moses leads the children of Israel out, because in Exodus 3 he said, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. But then when Joseph and Miriam go down with the infant Yeshua, and then after Herod dies, they come out of Egypt, Matthew says, thus fulfilling the prophecy, I've called my son out of Egypt. But then in Hosea 2, it talks about how I will allure her into the wilderness. I'll speak comfort to her there. And he talks about all the things that are going to happen. You're going to be betrothed to me there. And this is speaking of, an end day prophecy. And it'll be just like it was when I brought you up out of the land of Egypt. So prophecy doesn't have to be this or that. Another example, in Matthew 24, when Yeshua talks about the abomination of desolation. When you see this, leave, don't come back. And then in the midst of his statement, Matthew makes this parenthetical statement that says, let him who reads understand. And so why did Matthew make that statement? Because in Yeshua's day, it was believed that the prophecy about the abomination that makes desolate in Daniel 11 and 12 had already been fulfilled by Antiochus. Okay? I wouldn't argue that it hadn't been. But what does Yeshua seem to be saying? Well, it happened, it's going to happen again. So my thing here is that if a prophecy is fulfilled in one way, doesn't mean it's not fulfilled in another way. So, wickedness, to me, this gets back to the whole idea of function over form. Wickedness will manifest in different ways, and including what you just described. But the essence of it is, I don't want to downplay anything, The essence of it is more important than the dimension of it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So the word Isha, to get more to the point, the woman, Isha, this part of that word right there is the word Ish, or fire, which is what you were referring to. So he sees Isha in the basket. The lead disc is placed over, and I think, and it's been a long time since I heard Michael talk about that, but he talks about the lead disc being over that. I don't have my Hebrew Bible here with me, but there is actually a word there that relates to that. No. Pardon? No. It's in Zechariah. Let me see if I can find it. You have it there on your phone? Okay. In chapter 5 of Zechariah, what we're talking about here, when it's talking about the woman in the basket, the word for lead, and my mind had just... Anyway, it's related to the idea of dust, is the point. And it's the same word that is what the serpent is destined to consume all the days of his life. And there's a connection between the two, if I'm not mistaken. Let me, chapter 5. How do I use yours? Yes, that's it. And so the word afar, which is ayin theresh, it is actually the word for dust. And so there's a connection between that which the serpent in Genesis chapter 3 has to consume. Oh, I passed it up. I like this app. What's the name of this one, Robert? I'm going to have to get this. My point was in this, Warren, that it's translated lead in most, but not in all. And here you go. Remind me to get that name of that. That's pretty cool. And so it connecting it to the serpent and what happened in the garden as it relates to the woman, and then that same term or derivative of that term being used here to describe the lead disc, to me speaks more to the essence of it. What does it do? What is it really all about? And then where is it taken? It's taken to Babylon. I'm not downplaying what Michael says on that. I don't think there's. I certainly don't put that outside of the realm of possibilities. And even if it is that doesn't mean it isn't this over here. Anyway. Anyone else want to share anything real quick? Oh, what are your thoughts on that, whatever that word is, being the location of the Tower of Babel? Considering I don't even know what that word is, I can't answer that question. So I have no idea. Couldn't tell you. I have been told that the Hebrew word translated into English as woman is really the word fire. Is that true? Well, we just responded to that. The word woman is Isha or Isha. And here, show it on the screen again, Brand. It's Aleph, Shin, Hey. Let me write it a little better because I kind of messed that up. So it's Aleph, Shin, Hey. That's the word Isha, not this. Isha, or woman. But the first two letters of that word are Ish, which spell the word fire. Okay? This isn't the question, but since we're here, I'm going to go ahead and do this. This is the word Ish, or man. And so, or kind of husband and wife, as it were. And so you'll notice that they have these two letters in common. which is to suggest that if a man and woman come together and they're going to be husband and wife, there needs to be a little, fire, a little spark there. But what they have unique is the yud and the hey. And the yud and the hey together is Yah. So it's understood that if this union is going to work the way it's supposed to, that Yah has to be in the midst of the fire. If he's not in the midst of the fire will burn and will consume. When Yah is in the midst of the fire, it can burn and not consume. So that has nothing to do with your question, but anyway, no extra charge. But anyway, Isha does contain the word fire, but it's not the word fire. Do you see a connection to right now in Isaiah 14, verse 7, all earth at rest when judgment comes upon Babylon? Well, let's look over there real quick. Isaiah 14, 7. Well, let me back up a little bit and give it a little context. Verse 4, that you will take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how the oppressor has ceased, the golden city ceased, the Lord has broken the staff of the wicked, the scepter of the rulers. He who struck the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he who ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, no one hinders. The whole earth is at rest and quiet. They break forth into singing. Seems to me that verse 7 is a response to when the king of Babylon is broken. I don't think that's happened yet, personally. I don't think we're quite there yet. So, I have to read this next question here. Yeah. Can you tell me the name of the Bible app Robert uses? Robert, tell him the name of the app. No, you got the microphone, brother.
It's Sepharia, Sefaria.
It looks pretty cool.
It includes the Tanakh, the Targums, the Talmud, and several other things.
Does it have a search tool on it?
Yes, at the very top.
All right, so is that the way you spelled it? Did I spell that right?
That's it.
Okay. So there is the app that Robert uses. Okay. All right.
Candace was wondering. She's the one who asked.
Oh, Candace was wondering. Okay. Well, Candace, I'm surprised you didn't already know that. All right. So back to the question about Isaiah. It seems to me that all the earth is at rest when final judgment comes upon Babylon. That's what it seems to be saying to me. As far as its relation or connection to right now, all right, I will give you what I think, and I have absolutely no proof of what I'm about to say. So if you understand that, and I don't know what just happened there. What happened? Oh. Anyway, I have no proof of what I'm about to say. So maybe I shouldn't say it, but the illusionist always wants you looking here so that you're not looking here. And I said this a little bit on Shabbat. I think that there are wicked people who would think nothing of exploiting the situation that we have before us right now. I believe we're already seeing evidence of that. That's, me personally. But at the same time, I believe that the Creator, though he may not have initiated what's going on right now, he certainly can teach us things through it. And for all we know, something may have been interrupted by all of this kind of stuff. I mean, that's the part I have no proof of whatsoever. It's amazing to me that the whole world, to some degree or the other, has put everything on hold, and everybody's dealing with this issue in one way or the other. And it will be interesting to see what comes out of that. Specifically, are nations that have been so anti-border before now going to reconsider that point, considering that they're closing their borders right now? This is Europe, Israel, the United States, Canada, and all these different nations. A lot of people in those nations have always been about borders, about let's just all come together. Well, that was the message of Babylon. the founding of Babylon. Let's all come together. We don't want to be scattered abroad. We don't want to be divided up in all these different nations like God wants us to be. Let's all come together and let's build this one city. We'll establish our authority. And then he comes down and he confuses all of that. And they're forced to do things his way, more or less. And so it makes me wonder if something that you and I don't have any clue about or don't have any knowledge of, maybe that's the best way to put it, has been interrupted by all of this confusion. Now, take it for what it's worth. I have no proof of that whatsoever. I'm just thinking outside the box. But that's the way my mind works. So wonder if all the oil in the area of Shinar could be from the dead things you spoke of. That's way above my pay grade. But if I'm not mistaken, crude is organic material, is it not? And I think actually Carol Scott, Brad's wife, is a geologist, and I think I heard her talking about one time how that there's something to do with organic matter and it creating crude and all this. But I'm not the expert in that. I don't know. John?
Talking about cities and things like that made me think of Cain, and he was a rebel and he built a city so he wouldn't have to wander the earth. And Nimrod apparently doing the same kind of thing. And it made me wonder if this big gargantuan city that the Saudis are contemplating would kind of fall into that same category of, because it's my understanding also that they're wanting to bring everybody kind of into that city and just have a big brotherly love thingy going. So
Sing Kumbaya and get warm fuzzies and all that stuff. Yeah. And where is that city going to be? In Arabia.
Yeah.
Do you know where it's at? It's in the same area where the mounts, where what people believe is the authentic Mount Sinai, where it sits. So I'm going to go out on a limb.
And it's in the desert.
Right. It's in the
along
desert.
with Revelation there.
Oh, okay. I see where you're going. Okay. Interesting. But in Hosea 2, I'm going to lure her into the wilderness. That city's not there, at least then, or in that particular area. I don't know, but I see where you're going now. I hadn't thought about that. Interesting. Talking about Revelation 17, the woman in the wilderness. Okay. But yeah, from the beginning, cities, at least initially, were built why? In defiance. Because they didn't want to wander. They didn't want to be scattered. They didn't want to be out there. They wanted to be together. And I also think it's interesting that initially God didn't build a city and put Adam in that. He built a garden and he put him in that. So make of that what you will. Anyone else? There's more online? Well, there was nothing online a while ago, and now there's stuff online. So, okay, are the 30 minutes of silence and revelation connected to all the earth being at rest? I don't know. I don't know. I haven't even thought of that in those terms. I've always looked at it as kind of a running parallel with some of the patterns that we see in the Yom Kippur service in the temple when the high priest went into the Holy of Holies. I would relate it to that. I don't know if that means that it coincides with the rest that's upon the earth. I would be totally just pulling rabbits out of a hat. Are there more? Brandon, you have some more from online that you can put up there? Or Beth, do you have some you can read? Or Robert, do you have some you can read?
I'm not seeing any more online.
Okay.
No, that's the only one I saw.
Okay.
He had an interesting thing. He looked up the word they were looking for. Etamananki.
Oh, okay.
And it says it's a city that is at the foundation of, well, it's a temple of the foundation of heaven, and it's located, it says it's a ziggurat dedicated to Marduk in the ancient city of Babylon.
Okay. I don't know enough about it to comment one way or the other, as far as if that's the Tower of Babel. I don't know. I mean, That was a long time ago. And there's been a lot of rubble piled up since then. You know, I don't know. You go to Jerusalem now, it amazes me when we would go in what they call some people call it the Rabbi's Tunnel. It's the Western Wall Heritage Foundation or something like that. And you walk the entire length of the Western Wall, and as you're walking, you're farther and farther under buildings and streets and all this kind of stuff that's up above you. But you're walking along where the walls of the temple, or the outer walls of the temple, meet the bedrock of Mount Moriah. And so you've got all these layers on top of you. It amazes me. My point is that all used to be out in the open. So, you know, somebody, you know, in Jerusalem one time says, come here, I'll show you where Jesus put his hand on the way to the cross of Golgotha. And there's this indention in a stone wall that looks like it was built 50 years ago. Yes, that was it. I'm sure it was. What is my point? There's stuff that's been built and destroyed, built and destroyed so many times, you know. Unless there's an archaeological dig that can say there's some proof or evidence of it, I don't know, you know. I don't know what to say to things like that. All right, here's the last question. I'll take this one. Can I go home to my pregnant wife? Yes, you may. You may, absolutely. Robert, will you dismiss us in prayer, bro?
Father, we just thank you for this night that we've been able to come together virtually and physically, that we've been able to study your word and hear from your truth and seek for ways to apply it to our lives today. And Abba, we just ask that as we go forth from here, that this is just not an intellectual exercise, that this is actual application to our lives, that we look at what is happening now, that we see the application, that we see the reality, and that we prepare for what you are getting us ready for. Father, we just ask that you would grant travel mercies to everyone here as they return home, and strengthen us in the days ahead, that everything we do may bring honor and glory to your name. For it's under your authority and the authority of your Son, Yeshua HaMashiach, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Everybody have a great night. Be safe. We'll see you on Shabbat.